episode of the Goodrum Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Firstly, as per usual, big thank you to everybody that watched last week's episode, liked, commented, and also a big thank you to Lindors Abbey because for their sharing and liking the episode as well. Seems like I have some new fans there, and they were more than happy about obviously what I said. So that's really cool. So yeah, big thank you. Second thing I'd like to say just before we start is that all the and comments and things that I make on the show are purely my own and bear no relevance or have no bearing on Gauntley's of Nottingham. Obviously, as you know, I work for Gauntley's, but I would just like to point out that this show, this channel, everything to do with it is wholly and utterly independent and has nothing at all to do with the company that I work for. And as you know, I take no payments from any companies to review their products or give them a favourable review. I like to think that my reviews are 100% honest. You may well agree or disagree with them. That is obviously your prerogative to do so, but I would just like to say that I give an honest appraisal of everything that's sat in front of me. So anyway, that's a bit of legal jargon out of the way, I guess. Today's episode of the show, let's talk about something a little bit more fun, shall we? I wanted to do something a bit different again, and as you know, I like a drop of rum, and these samples have literally been sat around gathering dust. I mean, literally gathering dust. Look at you can see the dust on the top of at the top of the lid since 2017. So, and that's it. The thing is, every now and again, I just sort of look and think, what do I fancy doing? And I thought, yeah, I want to do a rum episode of the show, and these are. For no other, I mean, there's no link here apart from obviously they're all from Hunter Lang, they're all from the Kill Devil range, and I think they're all from 2017. It's a bit of an archive tasting, and I think the thing is with these particular bottlings of they never sold amazingly quickly in Gauntley's, and which was a bit of a shame, really. I mean, even if you go back. A couple of years ago when everybody was going, oh, rum's the next big thing, gin's had its day, and to a certain extent, yeah, certainly the sales of rum increased in that particular year. But again, I suppose part of the reason is that because these are single casks, their pricing is in a sort of around the same sort of price as a single cask whiskey of a similar kind of age. Although in saying that, I mean, they're still at the top end, 25-year-old single cask rum, somewhere in the region of 150, 160 pounds these days, I would guess, is still amazing value for money when you think about it. But I guess the problem was that rum was having its renaissance, and its renaissance was happening more in around the 30 to 50 pound area, shall we say, and a lot of these bottlings were just slightly beyond that kind of sweet spot, and I think personally, I just think they were criminally overlooked. And I've tasted no end of bottlings in the Kill Devil range and done several episodes of the show on them. And, there have been one or two that I don't think have been sort of as good as some of the other bottlings that they have done. But I would put my hand on my heart and say that you could buy any bottle from that Kill Devil range and you would get a quality product without a shadow of a doubt. Some are obviously going to, like I said, vary. And, you're just getting some awesome stuff bottled, and I think today's little lineup, although the samples are there's not a lot of surviving, it has to be said, but they are all in perfect condition, it has to be said, which is amazing when you think about it, because they've only been in these little bottles. Some have evaporated possibly a little bit, but I think from having used them earlier on, I think they're all perfectly okay. So not a great deal else to say apart from, shall we just take a look at today's lineup? Right, okay, so we're going to kick off with the light one. Now, the thing is, when you've got a lot of different age statements, different styles, different alcohol levels of samples, it's always difficult to know where to start. So I'm just going to start with the youngest, which is cask strength. So this is an 11-year-old Panamanian Kill Devil rum, bottled at 60.7%. It's from an unspecified distillery, although I would hazard a guess at probably Don Jose. It was distilled in January of 2006 and bottled in some stage in 2017. Bottling number 2, again, is another cask strength behemoth. This is a Kill Devil Guyanan rum. This time the distillery is specified, and it is the Diamond Distillery. It was distilled in July of 2004. It's from a pot still, so I'm guessing one of the Diamond pot stills rather than one of the other stills that they've become a repository for. So it's a 12-year-old, like I said, bottled, distilled in July of 2004, bottled in 2017 at 63.1%. Number 3 is one of those defunct Guyana distilleries. This is an Uitvlught. Now, it was distilled in December of 1999 and bottled sometime in 2017. It's 16 years old, and I'm pretty much certain that it comes from the tail end of the distillery's working life, because it was closed, I think, sometime either end of 1999 or sort of early 2000s, somewhere around that. So a bit of history, you know. I mean, it's this is the sort of thing you can pick up at a not sort of, you know, ridiculous price in single cask rums. Fourth one we'll be looking at is a Cuban, a 17-year-old from the Sancti Spiritus distillery, distilled on a column still, distilled in January of 1999, bottled at sometime in 2017. It's 17 years old and bottled at 46%. The penultimate bottling is quite an interesting one. This is called the Dark Overproof rum, or Dark Overproof blended rum, I should say. It's a blend of rums from Guyana and Jamaica. Now, when I had the original price list and all that kind of stuff, it did state on it that it was a 4-year-old. Now, I'm assuming that it's just because the 4-year-old rum is the youngest rum within the blend, I'm guessing. So it's bottled at 57%, and I don't think I've got enough left to put a little drop of water with that, so well, we'll just have to sort of toast it without. And as I was saying, with the Eiffel bottling, again, the last bottling is again looking at a piece of history. This is a 25-year-old Enmore Guyanan rum. Now, as you know, Enmore shut in 1995, and all the stills ended up at well, Eiffel at first, and then it ended up at Diamond. So that this comes from the time when the distillery was up in production. It was distilled in May of 1992, bottled in sometime in 2017, and bottled at 46%. So, you know, at the end of the day, yes, I mean, Diamond obviously now own the stills. They produce spirit on the old Enmore wooden stills, and it can be bottled as Enmore rum. Yeah, no problem with that whatsoever. But sometimes there's just a little bit more to a spirit than just purely its age. You know, there is that sort of feeling of history, of time, that's what you're drinking, you know. And all right, this is probably, I think, when it was released, I would guess somewhere in the region of 150, 160 pounds, somewhere between those 2 points, which, yes, is a lot of money for a 25-year-old whiskey, 25-year-old rum. But like I said, you know, bit of history, which is almost kind of priceless in my opinion. So let's just hope it tastes good. Yeah, let's just make a start. Do you remember how we like to watch the sky? Right, okay, so let's kick off with the Panamanian 11-year-old. That's a lovely nose. It's got that sort of dark honey, sort of slightly oxidised fruit. It's got a lovely fruitiness. It's just an almost kind of agricole kind of note. They're just at the edge, just a little herbalness. I mean, certainly I've tasted bottlings of Don Jose before, and it's never tended to have that slight sort of agricole kind of note. It tends to be more sort of rich and fruity, and certainly this is definitely fruity. Little bit of earth, little bit of tobacco as well. But that's a lovely nose for, you know, and it's an 11-year-old, so it's as we know, rum has a tendency to sort of mature slightly quicker than whiskey. But the thing is, what I don't obviously know, and what obviously Hunter Lang don't tell you, is how long the cask had been, you know, maturing in situ, if you like, and then you know, how long it had been, or whether it had been sort of, you know, purchased as juice and filled in Scotland. I mean, obviously there's no necessity for the company to say that, you know, but you know, it, considering sort of transparency and the fact that, you know, they are, you know, by nature single cask bottlings, it would certainly be nice to know. But either way, that's a lovely nose. Let's see what parts are. Thick, unctuous, luscious, juicy, slightly maturing tropical fruit, a little bit of dark toffee, a little bit of demerara sugar, 60 odd %, and it is so well integrated. It really, you know, you can't taste the alcohol. Dangerous, I know. It's got some oiliness to it. There's a little bit of menthol, that slight agricole note is kind of just coming through right on the finish. And yeah, it's a bit sweet, but it's not sort of sticky sweet. And I think that sort of, I think the alcohol is kind of like, you know, nicely balancing up that level of sweetness. And it certainly, to me, feels like a sort of a, well, yeah, I think it's probably a natural sweetness. I wouldn't want to sort of say for definite, and because I don't know quite what the Panamanians do. I mean, certainly we know that you know, some rum producers like Diplomatico will sweeten post distillation. It's possible that that's had a little bit of sweetening post-distillation, but the thing is, I've got no issue with that. It doesn't really bother me whether that's done or not. I mean, what at the end of the day is most important is, does it taste good? And, well, the answer to that is, yeah, it tastes damn good. Okay, so let's move on to the first of the Guyanan rums. So this is the Diamond Distillery 12-year-old. Let's see what the nose gives us. God, that's a pungent nose. That's a typical Guyanan nose. This is the style of Guyanan rum that I first encountered, and it just now, whenever I smell this kind of heavy, oily, lanolin, high-toned carrot, I think Guyana instantaneously. But that's not to say there's not some fruit. There's a touch of apricot. There's a little bit of orange. I'm not getting a great deal of oak. It's very spirit orientated. I'd like a little bit more oak personally, but you know, in saying that you kind of just get all the character of the spirit, you know. So in that respect, you're certainly winning. So that's right. Now the alcohol is a lot more evident, possibly because there isn't a sweetness, there isn't a lot of oak. You really get the alcohol come through on the finish, and it does master finish quite a bit. It's funky. I mean, I won't lie to you. Like I said, it's that typical funky Guyanan kind of oily lanolin kind of character, which is intriguing and interesting. It's not the most complex though, and I think that's where a little bit more sort of active oak would have certainly helped. But you know, it is what it is. It's an intriguing spirit. It's a kind of, like I said, it is a classic to me, certainly a classic Guyanan style, and it is what it is at the end of the day. Right, okay, so let's move on to the 16-year-old Eiffel. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? That's a lovely nose. Really estery. I'm getting pineapple, grape, banana, a little bit of vanilla. I mean, okay, it's not hugely complex. It's relatively linear, but by God, that's got a lovely character. I mean, that's a juicy, lovely estery rum, and here we have, in an absolute nutshell, 3 completely different types of and styles of rum. 2 come from the same island, but just day and night, chalk and cheese, you know. And this is the wonderful thing about rums. You know, a lot of people sort of think of certain styles attributed to certain islands and all that kind of thing, and it's just the same as Scottish whiskies. You know, just because the distillery happens to be in Speyside doesn't mean all Speyside whiskies are exactly the same. And yeah, being able to sort of like get these individual casks even kind of narrows it down even more if you want to really explore. You know, if you want to really explore rum. Short pass on. Touch more oak on the palate. A little bit more citrus as well, so it doesn't feel quite so sweet. Natural sweetness rather than anything else. Again, it's got that sort of estery tropical fruit, banana, apricot, maybe some melon, that kind of thing. Again, maybe not the most complex of rums, but it certainly delivers pleasantly. It's got a good length to it. And the aftertaste is lovely as well. You know, vanilla and estery fruit. It's just an all-round pleasant rum at the end of the day. I mean, I don't know what this would have retailed for back in the day, but yeah, I mean that's just again a lovely rum.
My dreams are not about happy quiet.
Okay, so time to move on to Cuba. Now, I mean, the thing is with Hunter Lang, I mean, certainly they weren't the first company to start bottling single cask rums, but they were the first company, as far as I'm aware, to create a range purely to bottle single cask rums. And as far as I'm aware, they're still the only independent bottling company that does so. Anyway, let's move on to the Cuban. Now, again, interesting nose. Quite medicinal. Again, we're almost kind of agricole here. Apricot, banana, lime. It has a vibrancy. There's a little bit of granulated sugar just in the background. Again, not a huge amount of active oak, so very much spirit orientated, and you are getting it all. Yeah, I love that. Again, like I said, it's got a slightly more pronounced sort of agricole kind of herbalness, but not quite so medicinal. It's a kind of, maybe a kind of a menthol or a sort of, you know, that kind of thing. It's an intriguing nose, and like I said, there's not a great deal of oak, so you are getting all of the character of the spirit, which is great. So pass on. A little bit more fruit on the palate, unsweetened pineapple, apricot, a little bit of citrus, not quite so much of the sort of herbal rancio. It's got it's got a kind of an intensity, it's got a kind of a youthfulness, relatively speaking. It's got a lovely kind of floral dried spice kind of finish. It's almost kind of like a fruit skin note right on the finish as well. It's got a lovely intensity. It's mouth filling, complex, long. You know, again, that's just a stunning rum. You know, and I mean, I've not had a huge amount of Cuban rums. I mean, you know the big Cuban brand, and so it's nice to kind of see something other than that. And you know, that stylistically is really intriguing. You know, like I said, it's got a sort of a nod to your agricoles in there, but it's not a full-on agricole. So it's kind of like you know, if you're thinking of moving into sort of trying the agricole rums and you've only ever tasted the sort of, you know, the more kind of molassy sort of rich sweet styles, then you know it's a good kind of stepping stone, I think. So yeah. Right, okay, so let's move on to something a bit darker. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Oh, that's a dark and rich and treacly nose. Lots of raisinated fruit. But I'm getting some of the funky Hampton notes coming through. You know, they are there. You know, it's like, and I suppose yes, you have to know your rums. You to kind of pick up on these kind of notes. But so you know, it's not your typical Guyana. And again, here we go. You know, it's just because it's, you know, got some Guyanan rum in it. They're not all going to be that sort of, you know, oily kind of funky rum notes. I mean, you know, as you well know, again, Jamaica, you know, you've got Appleton Estate, for example, and Appleton Estate is certainly nothing at all like Hampton at all, you know, as you well know. And certainly there's that kind of, I wouldn't get as far as saying fire and brimstone, but there's that funky Hampton note there, and I think, you know, on its own it can be a bit hard work, but you know, you include it in a blend like they have done here, you get the combination, you get a little bit of that, which kind of just adds some intriguing notes. Burnt wood, burnt toffee. Yeah, this is not a shy and retiring rum, it has to be said. Let's see what pass on. I think that's deteriorated a little bit over time, but it's still got a fullness, it's got a weightiness, it's got the treacle, it's got the sort of like burnt spices, but there's a citrus note there. That again, there's some of the Hampton funkiness. It's really well balanced. I think the sample has obviously degraded a little bit over time. I will admit that it's the finish has gone somewhat, but I think that's more down to, like I said, the oxidation of the sample rather than anything else. And I think this is just a perfect example of how the nose can be deceptive, not just on samples that have been left hanging around for years, but you know, in spirits in general, a lot of the time you are nosing because you know you can't always taste. You know, you're not going to taste your way around the warehouse because you'd be plastered by lunchtime. You know, so you're working with your nose and you're assessing with your nose, and sometimes a spirit can tell you one thing on the nose and something completely different on the palate. I've found that out on more than one occasion from tasting spirits. So, but anyway, I think when this was first released and first bottled, it was, you know, as per the nose, really stunningly good. For a blended rum, absolutely spot on. Don't know who put the blend together. I don't know whether it was bought pre-blended or whether Hunter Lang blended it, but whoever did a really good job. So yeah, good rum, good rum. Right, and finally, let's move on to a bit of history then. So this is the 25-year-old Enmore. Let's see what the nose gives us. Oh, that's stunning, stunning. I mean, it's developed that cognac-esque complexity. It's quite woody, so I would guess, if not all, at least some of the component of this was distilled on the Enmore wooden pot stills. It's got that almost sherry-like dried fruit, old cognac and oxidized fruit, dark roasted French coffee, a little bit of citrus. There's a bit of almost kind of tamarind juice, some burnt wood, a little bit of menthol. I mean, my God, that's stunning. I mean, that is so complex. And this is just what rum can do. It can mature effortless. I can't speak now. Oh my God, it can mature rather well. Stunning, absolutely stunning. And I'm probably guessing that this bottling is long since gone, but you know, if you can get hold of a bottle of this sort of aged rum, then stunning. Anyway, let's see what Pal's like. Unctuous, long. Again, that sort of old sherry, cognac-y kind of dried fruit rancio, a little herbal note, dark treacle, dusty spice. It's just so mellow. It's long, but there is a little bit of, obviously the 46%. It's just giving it that little kind of spiciness. That's giving it that little kind of lift. Certainly on the mid palate, keeping it fresh. There's a little. It gets quite woody on the finish. Again, obviously the wooden pot stills, and that's the thing, you know, they do add a sort of a woodiness to the character of the spirit. I've tasted, you know, quite a lot of I say quite a lot, a few bottlings that come off or at least have rum that's been partially used from the old Enmore wooden stills, and they do have that kind of woody character. And this has it. It's got the soft spices, slightly dark chocolates, a little bit of bitterness right on the finish. I mean, it really lingers. And you know, this is just the thing with old rums. They are still relatively good value for money. And if you love your rums, which I know a lot of you do, the Kill Devil range is still, you know, a good one to go for. So there you go. Right, okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show. Well, you know, okay, so it's a bit of an archive tasting, I will admit, but I think hopefully what it shows, and to maybe some of you guys that maybe have not seen some of my earlier rum episodes of the show, it shows how different rums from even the same island can be. The Panamanian, yeah, like I said, I mean, great rum, nice and oily, had that sort of slight esteriness to it, but it also had that sort of slight sort of mentholy kind of agricole kind of note happening there, but it's not sort of overly dominated by that. I know that the 100% agricoles tend to be sort of like the peated malts, you know, they are very much the Marmite of the rum world. But you know, when you've got a sort of a nice balance and you want to maybe explore them and just move into them gently, then you know, these are sort of things that you could look for. The Diamond 12-year-old, okay, you know, it was very much a typical Guyanan rum, and not a great deal of oak. I think it could have probably done with a little bit more active oak character, but in saying that, you got all of the spirit character, so you know, you're not losing out on that. I just think maybe a little bit more oak would have just given it a slightly better balance. The Eiffel, I mean, lovely, absolutely lovely rum, estery, fruity. Maybe not amazingly complex, but you know what it delivered, it really delivered well, and you know, I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. The Cuban, again, it has a sort of maybe a sort of slightly more pronounced kind of agricole note, but again I would put that in a similar kind of category to the Panamanian, in the, you know, if you're looking at sort of, you know, exploring that kind of style of rum, then this is a kind of nice one to kind of ease you in, I suppose. It's yeah. And the Overproof Dark, again, I thought that was a, you know, a very, very good blend. Whoever put the blend together did a sort of like, you know, an amazing job there. You know, it had elements of the slightly more darker end of the Guyanan spectrum, and, you know, the funkiness of Hampton. You know, it certainly certainly was really well blended, and, you know, this is the thing with blended spirits. You know, what you're looking for is something that doesn't exist within nature, you know, and certainly, you know, that was, well, it's not Frankenstein, but, you know, it was really intriguing, really well put together. And the 25-year-old Enmore, I mean, stunning, absolutely stunning. And you know, like I said, if you really love your rums, and, you know, you're going to sort of splash out and treat yourself, get hold of a sort of like a single cask, you know, a 25-year-old single cask, because they're just stunning. I mean, obviously some of them may well be a bit older and a bit woody, but by and large, like I said, I've had, you know, no issues quality-wise with the Kill Devil range, and I would quite happily say, if you've got them in your locale, you know, in your local liquor store or you know, specialist, just get yourself a bottle. You know, you won't regret it. So so yeah, so I think this week, I thought this week's episode of the show was good fun. It was, like I say, a bit of an archive tasting. So until next week, I don't know quite what I'll be doing next week, but I'm sure it'll be interesting. So until then, good afternoon and good dramming.